Segment 3, south of the border, Victor Davis Hanson. Quote, Mexico devolves daily into a more corrupt and violent place than Iraq or Pakistan. The fossilized leadership in Mexico City shows no interest in reforming, counting on the more than $20 billion in remittances that return to the country each year. But Americans are tired of picking up the tab to subsidize nearly 15 million poor illegal aliens. Close quote. Mexico, bad and getting worse. You want to stick with that assertion?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Okay, let me give you a
Absolutely.
counter-argument about the Mexican government.
Yep.
Far from proving passive, for 4 years, the president of Mexico, Felipe Calderón, has been struggling to recapture control of the country from the drug organizations. 28,000 Mexicans killed in this, 2,000 of them state and federal police. So I put it to you, Victor, that you ought to support Calderón's effort to regain control of his country at least as stoutly as you supported George W. Bush's effort to put down the insurgency in Iraq.
That's a different question.
Okay, draw the distinctions.
Because we're in the 11th hour in Mexico. This is a tactical decision. The Mexican government, in an existential war's existence, says at the 11th hour we've got to finally turn on these drug leaders and corruption. But what they don't make the connection is that if you didn't have drug cartels, you'd have to invent them in Mexico. Because when you have a statist economy and a non-transparent economy and a class-bound racist culture, you're going to get
racist meaning the Spanish descent, lording it over the indigenous
peoples. And when you have all of those problems that have not been addressed and papered over, then you're going to get something like the drug cartel, and you're going to have to fight it. But the real question is President Calderón, is he going to bring in transparency? Is he going to open up the society to foreign investment? Is he going to readjust the tax code? Is he going to allow people to have buy and sell land freely and have title to it?
You're being so impatient because they're along but along the Texas border they were doing pretty well, and in Monterrey, which is the second biggest city in Mexico, in the last decade, business has become more normal in Monterrey. It's a wealthy, you can do business in Monterrey almost as easily as in Miami. There are spots where they're improving in Mexico.
No, Peter.
Why are you so impatient?
There's a highway in the indigenous part of Mexico in the center, and Mexican government says, if you live in Chiapas, if you live in Oaxaca, I suggest you go north. Mm-hmm. Go north, and for the first time in your life, we will champion your civil rights when you get arrested in the Tulare County Jail. And by the way, send us $25 billion a year so that we don't have to pay for social programs for your families. But on the other side, on the western coast, suddenly we're going to discover things like property rights, investment, because we're going to build and advertise resort communities in Baja for wealthy white people to have a second and third home. So you ask yourself, if Mexico can do that in Baja, why can't they do anything in Oaxaca? And the answer is that we're getting back into a statist, state-run economy, a corrupt elite, a racist elite, and a United States that all they have to say is the Mexican War, the Treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo, any one of those buzzwords, and people are supposed to forget all of their complaints against the Mexican government. So they march.
I just want to push you a little bit on the trajectory. You really think Calderón is worse than López Portillo in the 80s?
No, I think he's better. I think that, but that's not the question. The question is he going to address the underlying problem that makes Mexico Mexico?
He's struggling for his political...
No, he can't. He's not in a position to do that. So he's going to survive, perhaps, by taking on people who would... I mean, he has no choice. He either fights back or he doesn't exist. But the question is he going to be able to convince the elite to make the sort of changes that would turn it into a country like Chile or the United States? And the answer is no.
Counter-argument on immigration. Since 2005, the inflow of illegal aliens from Mexico has dropped by 2/3. Part of that is because we have a weaker economy up here. The magnet is less powerful, but part of it is surely increased American resources at the border, including the incomplete border fence. Incomplete, but a couple hundred miles in place. So my word to you is, Victor, relax. The worst of the immigration problem is already over. Mm-hmm. Americans will calm down as they see that we're reasserting control at the border. And then over a period of time, these X million who are here illegally can be digested, dealt with, assimilated. That's the counter-argument. What do you make of it?
Well, I wrote an article called Mexifornia, Do We Want Mexifornia in 2002, and the book came out in 2003, and that's exactly what I said. I said we have to have increased border support, scrutiny. We have to find employers. If we have an economic downturn, it will not be so attractive. We have to push assimilation. We have to build a fence. A lot of us wrote that. And the result of all of that pressuring
it's working.
Is starting to work. But the central problem is that there's a two-pronged dilemma. The right wants to close the border and assimilate people. And that we should deport people who just got here. We should deport people who are on entitlements and not working. We should deport people who have a criminal record. But there's still going to be 7 or 8 million people here who are following the rules and working and came under the assumption it was open borders. So we're going to have to work with them, earn citizenship, make them. We have a lot of leverage. For the first time, we can say to somebody, yeah, you can listen to Spanish television, you can do all that, bilingual interpreters and all that, but you're going to have to learn English. You're going to have to take a test about American citizenship. We can do that, but we can work with them. And on the other hand, the left, we know wants, when you're talking about things are getting better, they are, but we're still talking about 500 to 700,000 attempted crossings per year. And we know the left wants to remake the political constituencies of the American Southwest for political purposes. And we know that there's a small elite of the Chicano community in journalism, politics, and the university who wants to have a permanent underclass that they can attribute that a failure to achieve parity on the basis of racism, and therefore themselves are the spokesman, and they do pretty well. And that's where the left is on that issue. So we're going to have to close the border and work with the people that are here that are law-abiding and working. I think everybody understands that.
Victor, you're a fifth-generation Californian?
Yes.
All right. Question about California, our state of California. The Hispanic proportion of the population has risen from about 16% in 1970 to about 37% today. In the decade from 1990 to 2000, 2 million more people left California than entered from other states. Yes. The census of 2010 will surely show an even larger number.
Yes.
So what you've got here basically is largely white, middle-class Californians moving out in large numbers. So this is a crude question, but I don't know how else to phrase it. Has California passed the tipping point?
It's hard to know because I don't know what Hispanic or Mexican means anymore. I've got a brother who's married to a Mexican woman. I've got another brother who's got 2 stepchildren that are half Mexican-American. I've got a friend whose grandson is one quarter Mexican, 1/4 Asian.
That's all good news, right?
It's
we
good.
Intermarriage.
Absolutely.
They're Americans. Everybody you name thinks of himself
what
as
I'm
an
thinking
American,
is
right?
happening in California is we have an elite that trills their R's, and if they're named Joe Lopez, they call themselves Jose Lopez. And then they find career opportunities in the media and the universities. But while that...
professional Hispanics,
exactly.
So to speak.
But while that's going on, in the muscular classes, people are intermarrying and they're starting to interact and assimilate, even though they were told the melting pot is passé, the salad bowl, and it's not true. So that is very positive. And the tragedy is, if we would just stop the border, close the border,
and wait a decade and a half,
and let it mix up, and then allow Mexico to have 50,000 legal immigrants per year, privilege them a little bit more than other countries, we could solve this problem in 20 years.